Welcome back. Wi-Fi streaming with Ben Miller. Good to see you all again. Running a little bit late today. Sorry about that. Gonna put out a quick tweet. Before I put out the tweet, let me bring up here what we are talking about today. So yeah, there you go. Welcome to Wi-Fi Streaming with Ben Miller. Longtime viewers, you may notice a difference. In fact, let me put up the quiz here while I'm sending out the tweet. Let's see here. Hopefully that will work. There we go. So yeah, you may notice something a little bit different. For those of you that have been joining me for a while. And so the question is, what is it? What is different about the look? And no, it's not the date. The look. Man, I'm doing a great job of, I got to get some of that Finnish licorice vodka, I think. Starting late. Mixing up words, not writing very well. It's clear that I'm out of sorts. So yeah, while you think about that, I am going to send out the tweet, letting everybody know. I do have to. Let's get the Twitter machine up here. Take me just a moment. But yeah. So yeah, welcome back. Thank you for joining. Sending out the tweet to let everybody who doesn't subscribe on Twitch but does follow me on Twitter know that the stream has started. And then we'll get going. As as I keep the look up today, today's topic is going to be 6 gigahertz. I blogged about 6 gigahertz yesterday. I'll share with you the blog shortly. Let's get this set up now. Streaming now on Twitch. Tell people to join. Whoops, Twitch. I'm sure this is very compelling. Especially for those of you that aren't watching live and are watching this archived on YouTube. Hopefully you've fast forwarded the first couple of minutes here to look for when things actually change. I know I should be getting this stuff done before starting the stream, but what can I say? I like to try to be as close to punctual as possible. Topic today is 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. And as far as kind of my side stuff, time that I spend on the side stuff, most of my recent time has gone towards the blog post that I put out yesterday. You can see there. You can always check out the blog at sniffwifi.com. That's the place to go to kind of read about that if you want to. But yeah, the point there being that I put together a very, very basic presentation today. I'll try to do a little bit of whiteboarding, but it did occur to me right before I started that there were some things that I probably should have included that I didn't. Some things about the different rules, and so I'll kind of write those in. I'll kind of whiteboard those in, so to speak, the things that I didn't include. So yeah, again, welcome for those of you that may be new to the stream or maybe watching an archived version on Twitter or Twitch. My name is Ben Miller. You can contact me, or you can follow me on Twitch. Ben_Sniff Wi-Fi is my Twitch handle. Much appreciated if you follow me on Twitch or subscribe to the Twitch stream. I forget exactly which terminology Twitch uses, but yeah, following or subscribing is appreciated. If you're on Twitter, my handle is @Ben Miller. can also contact me via email, ben_Miller@icloud.com. I do work as a Wi-Fi consultant and do a variety of things in the world of Wi-Fi. Do some writing on Wi-Fi, do training on Wi-Fi, do traditional consulting, pre and post installation consulting, whatever that may be. Design work, adjustment work, surveying, if you want to call it that. All sorts of different things related to Twitter. Been working on Wi-Fi a long time. Got started in it back in late 2003. So maybe neighborhood of, what would that be there? 16 and a half years, something like that I've been working in Wi-Fi. So the topic today is going to be 6 gigahertz. In these times of pandemic, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say, hope everybody is staying safe, hope everybody's staying healthy, and do the things you need to do. Avoid face touching, finger licking, nose picking. Things of that nature with dirty. I guess if you're a big nose picking fan, maybe you live in an arid area of the country or the world, wash your hands before you pick your nose. It's probably a little bit antithetical there. If you are a nose picker, chances are you're not doing a ton of hand washing as well. But similar stuff. Face touching, things of that nature. Try to stay clean. Etc. Here in Los Angeles, that's where I live, is in Los Angeles. The other big thing is masks. And that can be a great way to kind of keep people from naturally touching their face or picking their nose. You can't pick your nose through a mask. You can't you can't lick your fingers through a mask. So I think the mask stuff is definitely good. So hopefully you all are staying safe, staying healthy. Let's get into, and I think I should, since I promised it, go get the old licorice vodka. So give me just a moment here. I'm running low, UC. I don't know if UC from Mist is watching, well-known guy within the Wi-Fi world. I'll have to bring up his page, his Twitter page, so those of you that may not be familiar with UC can follow him. But he's a well-known person within the Twitter world. He's from Finland, and a couple of years ago, he was nice enough to give me this beautiful bottle of Finnish licorice vodka. There it is right there. You can see the bottle is getting close to empty. And I need a refill. I don't know where I can get this Salmiakki vodka. It has a backwards K in the name. Look at that. Pretty cool. I'm a big hockey fan, and so that's my big reference to Finland. Two things, I guess, are my big reference to Finland. One is hockey. I'm a big hockey fan. There's a lot of professional hockey players here in North America that are from Finland. And then the other one is this great line. I don't know where the heck I first heard it. But it was a line from back in the Cold War era. So I was born in 1977, so this must have been sometime in the 1980s, because Cold War more or less ended by 1990. And the line was something to the effect of, Finland opposes the removal of landmines because Finland is the landmine to Russia. So there was this, the backstory of that is, back at that time, there were definitely a lot of, peace activists, if you want to call them that were very high on the idea of And let's bring up UC's page here. Whoops, there we go. There were a lot of peace activists that were very high on the idea of removing all of the landmines between the East and West, between the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union, and Western Europe, where where socialism hadn't taken over yet, or at least I don't know if socialism's exactly the right way to put it, but because I'm sure there's definitely some countries in Western Europe back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s that would have called themselves socialist. So maybe social. Wow, this really is the end of the licorice vodka. Sad day. All that's left at the bottom is an absolutely disgusting sludge, which makes me wonder if it's wise. I don't know if they're going to still exist, but this is a minor league baseball team for the Milwaukee Brewers, the Biloxi Shuckers. Biloxi is a city in Mississippi, down by the Gulf Coast, down in the southern part of Mississippi. I did some work there. It's a few years ago now. I'm trying to remember exactly how long ago that would be. Probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was working in Biloxi, but they're the minor league. They're one of the minor league baseball teams for my favorite major league baseball team. And that's the Milwaukee Brewers. I am originally from Milwaukee. But yeah, so back in the Cold War era, Finland was, or there was this movement to get rid of landmines. There was the whole, the way a lot of these sort of I don't know what you want to call them, social justice or whatever movements would happen where people find horrible events and try to get major policy changes based on kind of the emotional response that some folks might have for a horrible event. Not as I'm talking about it I'm thinking of some current things that may be happening along those lines, but I'll stay away from that topic. But yeah, so the idea was, there's all these landmines that the West, that the U.S. or the U.K. or other countries that had not gone full socialist, that they had placed to keep the Russians from coming towards the West. But Finland was very opposed to removing those landmines, and Finland was it was the area where a lot of those landmines were. It has that. It's kind of on the border there in the west, but very, very close to the east. And that was the old line. That was what I always thought of when I thought of Finland was, Finland opposes the removal of landmines because Finland is the landmine. Because Finland is the country where if Russia decides to, or the Soviet Union, I guess, back at that time, if the Soviet Union decides to invade, Finland's going to act as the landmine. It's the thing that's going to take the brunt of that invasion. So good old UC. Thank you, UC. Hopefully I didn't get too much sludge in this. Tastes mostly sludge-free. Man, do I love the taste of licorice. I know UC, I think at least UC gave me this as a joke. Like, here's a Finnish authentic drink that's going to taste totally disgusting to your American palate. But I happen to be a big anise fan or licorice fan, whatever you want to call it. And so I actually love this. I don't drink vodka, though. That's the one thing is I don't know if I would call myself a heavy drinker, but I will drink alcohol occasionally. But I'm much more of a gin person rather than a vodka person. It's one of the stupidest kind of things, most illogical things. And I realize I'm already 15 minutes into the stream and I haven't gotten to the topic yet, but I'll get there soon. I realize it's totally illogical, but and here's what we're going to be talking about today. As much as I love UC, we are not going to be talking about UC that much more today. Ooh, look at that. Troubleshooting webinar. Hey, let's put this in the chat area. Maybe this will be something that folks are interested in. There you go. So that's a link there that I just copied. A webinar for Mist. If I'm gonna be talking about UC, might as well promote his stuff a little bit. But yeah, so the point is the sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, gotcha. I was gonna go to today's topic. So yeah, today's topic is going to be about 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. I just did a blog post about it. Again, the blog post is at sniffwifi.com. If you just want a direct link, I'll post the direct link here in the chat area for those of you that are following along live. For those of you that are watching the archive, you can probably see the chat link there, or sorry, see the link at the top of the screen. Also, simple way to go about it is just go to sniffwifi.com, sniffwifi.com, and you can read 5 facts about the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. And, you know, I realize that this topic may seem somewhat trivial, right? Because typically in the past, and even to some degree with 6 gigahertz, the opening of new Wi-Fi frequencies, the opening of new Wi-Fi channels is kind of a somewhat simple topic. It's just, okay, we used to have, you know, I'll take the example of the 5 gigahertz band. Back when I first started in Wi-Fi, it was, all right, we have Uni 1, 2, and 3. We have Uni 1, which is 5 gigahertz channels 36 through 48. Uni 2, 5 gigahertz channels 52 through 64. And then there were some devices that, not many at the time, but some devices that supported Uni 3. Uni 3 was channels 149 through 161. So you had 36 through 48, you had 52 through 64, you had 149 through 161. Then in 2004, you know, I'm really dating myself here. Then in 2004, what do you call it? The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, kind of decided we're going to allow Wi-Fi to have a little bit more frequency. Let's open up Uni 2 Extended. So Uni 2 was channels 52 through 64. And so the idea was, let's open up some more channels. Let's give them similar rules to the existing 52 through 64. Whoops. Sorry, having a little problem, technical issue here. Sorry about that. So yeah, let's open up more channels. Let's give them similar rules or the same rules as Uni 2. Let's give them the rules of same rules as 52 through 64. Let me make sure the phone is okay. Good. Thought I had a little technical issue there. Let's give those extra channels, and that's it. So it was like, okay, now we can use these extra Uni 2 extended channels. That's channel numbers 100 through 140. Channel 144 has also been added since then. But at the time, it was channels 100 through 140, and it was a very simple thing. It's just, here's more channels. Okay, now instead of being able to set up 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi access points over 12 possible channels, now you have 23 possible channels where you can use 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. Back at that time, it would have been 802.11a. And then eventually 802.11n Wi-Fi. So it was a relatively simple thing. With the 6 gigahertz band, there's some similarities. The 6 gigahertz band has a lot of rules that are the same as existing Wi-Fi, the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. However, there are some key differences, and that's the whole point of this blog post is, you know, I just wanted to go through 5 different, you know, and some of the, like fact number 1, that's kind of the simple part of it. Okay, we're just adding extra spectrum for Wi-Fi, but once we get into the other 4 facts, then we start getting into areas where there are some complications, where there are some rules that are a little bit different. And so, look, I know I'm doing a lot of shameless self-promotion for the blog here. If you're not a big fan of blogs, then I'm going to basically talk about similar stuff here. And then also, I wanted to do this on Twitch where it's a little bit more interactive. So those of you that are following along, if you do have questions, if you do have comments about anything that was in the blog or anything that I'm talking about here on the stream related to 6 gigahertz, that way I can hopefully address them. Let's take our next sip of the licorice vodka. So yeah, so that's the idea here. Quick note before I get into the 6 gigahertz band in earnest. I do owe a debt of gratitude here to this blog post here. It's on the Wireless Training Solutions website, wirelesstrainingsolutions.com. I will copy and paste the full URL into the chat area here. So those of you that are following along on Twitch, you can see the URL there. Look, and those of you that may be watching the archive on on Twitch or on YouTube, you can do your Google search appropriately. You can Google search Wireless Training Solutions Future-Phi, or you can Google October 9th, 2018. And the reason why I owe a debt of gratitude, and by the way, I have to give a quick shout out, Rick Murphy. He's my old boss. Back in 2004, I started teaching some classes for an outfit called Global Knowledge. And Global Knowledge's wireless course director at the time was Rick Murphy, and he taught me a ton of stuff about Wi-Fi. Back in hindsight, I was probably not the best student. I was supposed to be sort of auditing the class, and I had, I was trying to learn a lot of stuff, so I had a lot of kind of, questions, and I probably interrupted his class far too much. But the reason why I want to put some shine on Rick and on the Wireless Training Solutions site, and I'm sure Wireless Training Solutions does a fantastic job. Rick is, he knows as much about Wi-Fi as anyone. He does a great job developing. He's developed CWNP course material before. He's done a lot of great work. He's done consulting work. Obviously, he does writing work on the Wireless Training Solutions website. He does training. A lot of similar stuff to what I do. Probably Rick, I'm sure, does a lot more of it. But yeah, so Rick put together this great channel map. So I'm going to make a lot of use of this channel map here. Let's open this bad boy in a new tab so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So yeah, this is a big part of kind of what I'll be using. And I just find this to be a fantastic resource. It shows you the different bands, as long as you know the different rules for the different bands and such, then I find this to be extremely valuable. So yeah, so check out that blog on the Wireless Training Solutions website. You can obviously check out my blog if you want a little bit more information. For those of you that are not big fans of blogs, not big fans of reading that type of stuff, if you'd rather have a little bit of audio visual, then that's what the Twitch stream is all about here. And yeah, K2JSV, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, just mentioning there, he's taken some Wireless Training Solutions classes. They've been great. I'm sure they are. I mean, Rick's a fantastic trainer. Like I said, he I was relatively new to the training part of things back in mid 2004. I believe it was actually in April where I first so it's more or less exactly 16 years since I met Rick. So yeah, I'm sure they do a fantastic job with training. I believe they even do a lot of stuff beyond wireless. Don't quote me on that, but if I remember correctly, yeah, it looks like they do. So it looks like they do some stuff even beyond wireless there. So yeah, good stuff there. But let's, again, if you wanted to read a blog, you can read a blog. If you wanted to, take a formal class, you can take a formal class. This is Twitch, baby. This is free. This is audio visual. This is it's a multimedia experience done by a person who has absolutely no idea how to do multimedia. Me. Man, it's so sad living here in Los Angeles. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting someone who knows how to do graphical design or podcast production or video editing or something like that. There's just a lot of quote unquote creatives in the area. And I'm such a novice in all of those areas. I don't know what it is, but I've just always had like a big mental blockade when it comes to technology. I'm not great with computers. I'm not great with again, like the graphical, the audio visual stuff. It's for whatever reason, the networking side, the infrastructure side of things is something that I've always had interest in and that I've been able to pick up pretty well. But a lot of the other creative stuff I just haven't done a great job with. Last of the licorice vodka. If Yusi's out there, thank you again, Yusi. And I need a refill. The vodka was good. It only lasted like 2.5 years. Okay, I'm starting to get to sludge. No more of the licorice vodka. That was a mistake. Okay, so yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about the 6 gigahertz band. So the headline of 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi is we are getting 1200 megahertz of extra space. To put that in perspective, in the 5 gigahertz band, if I am remembering correctly, it is somewhere around 600 megahertz of total space. So in this band, in the 6 gigahertz band, we have 1200. So it's about double. It's about double the amount of channel space. Actually, I think it's even a little bit more than double. 5 gigahertz may be more so in the neighborhood of 500 to 550 megahertz. To be honest with you, it's... Oh, I'm writing over my head. I forgot about that. I got to be more careful here. Sorry. So 5 gigahertz is somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 550 megahertz of total space. 6 gigahertz is 1200 megahertz of total space, of total frequency space. So we're more than doubling. We're basically tripling the amount of channel bandwidth that we have for 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. And the idea here is that 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz are frequencies that are so close together that a typical Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz radio will be able to use software to be able to kind of upgrade to using the 6 gigahertz band. At least theoretically, the idea is if you have a Wi-Fi 6 device, if you have a Wi-Fi 6 access point or a Wi-Fi 6 client device, that Wi-Fi 6 device will not need to be replaced in order to be able to take advantage of the 6 gigahertz band. The 6 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band are so close together, this is at least the idea, those two bands are so close together that, let's say you have an iPhone 11, Apple will just be able to provide a software update to the iPhone 11, and then bang, the iPhone 11 will be able to use this extra 1200 megahertz of frequency. So that's kind of the big headline of the 6 gigahertz band. It's just giving us way, way, way more frequency space. That's kind of the big idea here, is we're getting a lot of extra frequency space. But... And so look, I guess I need to give this context. So the idea when you're getting a lot of frequency space is it can help alleviate what a lot of people like to call the spectrum crunch. Whoops, there's only one C there. The idea of the spectrum crunch is a technology becomes so popular that performance starts to degrade because you don't have enough frequency space. It's something that happened to AT&T Wireless here in the United States due to the iPhone. I know I'm again dating myself as far as how long I've been around this stuff. I'm not a fresh young foal anymore. But you know, the iPhone comes out back in 2007. Cellular data networks had been set up for a long time. You know, there was the BlackBerry, there was the Palm Trio, there were a number of cellular wireless devices that would use cellular data. And all of a sudden in 2007, Apple releases the iPhone. Apple makes a deal with AT&T Wireless here in the United States to make AT&T Wireless the exclusive provider of iPhones. And the iPhone blows away all expectations in terms of sales. I'm trying to remember exactly what the numbers were. They seem so quaint nowadays, but it was like Apple's goal was to sell 1 million iPhones per year. I mean, nowadays Apple sells like 1 million iPhones per week. But it was like Apple's goal was, okay, maybe we'll be able to sell 1 million iPhones per year. BlackBerry's out there. Palm Trios are out there. Those things are kind of the dominant players. We're a new player. So hopefully we can maybe sell 1 million iPhones per year. The iPhone becomes a humongous hit, and AT&T's network just wasn't ready for it. AT&T, I should say, just faced a major spectrum crunch because there were so many iPhone users, so many people wanted to use cellular data for their iPhones, and the iPhone was the type of device that kind of fostered a little bit more wireless data communication than some of the previous devices. And so AT&T ended up having to go out and acquire a bunch of extra spectrum. I believe, I know some of the extra spectrum they acquired was from the old TV white spaces down around 700 megahertz, if I remember correctly. I believe Aloha Communications was one of the companies that they had to acquire spectrum from, pay, you know, I believe it was billions of dollars, definitely millions and millions, if not billions of dollars. But the point is they had to acquire all this extra spectrum to kind of handle the needs of all these extra users. The idea is in Wi-Fi we have at least a somewhat of a spectrum crunch today. I would say for most Wi-Fi networks, at least most enterprise Wi-Fi networks, if the networks are properly designed and properly configured, we don't really have a spectrum crunch. The way it works in the 5 gigahertz band is that most devices will support 25 channels. Those channels are 20 megahertz wide. And so unless you have an environment where a typical Wi-Fi client device, you know, something like an iPhone or similar, unless you have a environment where a typical Wi-Fi client device is going to be able to see more than 25 access points, you don't really have a spectrum crunch. And I can definitely tell you it's been rare where I've been in an environment where we need more than 25 channels. It's happened. One of the jobs I was on out in the UK was a big open office space, and depending on where you were in the open office, there were areas where more than 25 access points could be seen by a typical client device. When I was working at USC, we had some areas, some buildings on campus that had kind of big open areas, and there were places in certain buildings where more than 25 access points could be seen from a typical client device. There were some, I don't know if there were too many outdoor areas. Our outdoor coverage was so sparse at USC that I don't think we really faced a spectrum crunch. We had other problems in the outdoor area, but I don't think we really had a spectrum crunch. But the bottom line is there's some areas that kind of have this spectrum crunch, but from the perspective of sort of some of the leaders of the Wi-Fi movement, and I remember a few years ago at the WLPC conference, the Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, talking to Chuck Lukashevsky, Chuck L, as he is commonly known on Twitter. Again, he is from Aruba. Chuck Lukashevsky Used to be Aruba's sort of large public venue guru. He used to be the guy who would kind of guide Aruba's best practices for deploying Wi-Fi at stadiums and concert venues and other large public venues. Chuck kind of switched directions in his career. He kind of moved towards the lobbying end. So now he works with Aruba, lobbying the FCC and lobbying trade organizations, lobbying the Wi-Fi Alliance, basically lobbying any, I suppose the CWNP program who does certifications. I'm sure he has communication with them as well about trying to sort of guide the direction of their certification in a direction that Aruba would like it to go. Or Aruba HPE, I guess, is technically the name now. But what Chuck Lukaszewski told me, and man, how good is my Polish pronunciation? Man, this should be Polish vodka. I don't know if we have any Poles watching the stream here, but I love the Finnish people, don't get me wrong. But, when you grow up in Milwaukee, the Polish names just roll off the tongue. No, I don't have any idea how to spell Lukaszewski, but I know that that's how you pronounce Chuck's last name, and it's simple. It's just when you grow up around enough Polish people. I got a buddy who's from Joliet, Illinois, same deal. He sees a Polish name, 12 letters, maybe one vowel, 2 at the most. It's simple. There's no difficulty in pronouncing Lukaszewski. It's just, it's a natural thing that you get from growing up in the Midwest. I don't mean to brag too much, but that's just the reality of the situation. In any case, I was talking to Chuck Lukaszewski back at the one of the Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, and what he was saying was, yes, we may not have a spectrum crunch today if you're using 20 megahertz wide channels. But that's not what we want to be using. When you use a 20 megahertz wide channel, and I'm going to empty the whiteboard here for just a moment, for a typical Wi-Fi client device, you're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of a 200 megabit per second maximum data rate. You're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, a 120 megabits per second maximum throughput. Fine. Not the end of the world to have this 120 megabits per second maximum throughput. But is that the best we can do? Don't we want Wi-Fi to be sort of the preeminent technology that people turn to? Yes, if you're surfing the web, you get an adequate speed for clicking on links, watching videos, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, listening to songs on SoundCloud, whatever it is you're doing on the web. Yeah, you get an adequate speed, but don't we want it to be more like lightning fast? Don't we want it to be more like when you have, let's say, an 80 megahertz Wi-Fi channel and your maximum data rate is closer to the neighborhood of, let's say, 850 megabits per second, and your actual throughput is more in the area of 500 megabits per second, or perhaps even more? That was kind of Chuck's argument he was making to me. His pitch, so to speak, is, yeah, we may not have a spectrum crunch if you restrict yourself to 20 megahertz wide channels, but we have Wi-Fi standards that support channels up to 80 megahertz wide. In fact, with Wi-Fi 5, we support 80 megahertz Wi-Fi channels. We even support 80 plus 80. 80 plus 80 is sometimes called 160 megahertz. The reason why it's called 80 plus 80 rather than just calling it 160 is that each 80 can be separate. I'll go back to the little image from the Wireless Training Solutions website that I was showing you all a little bit earlier on. So 20 megahertz channels at the top, 40 megahertz on the second row. Third row is 80 megahertz. Okay. So let's say this channel number 55. That's an 80 megahertz wide channel. It includes channels 49, 53, 49, 53, 57, 61. Those four channels, 49, 53, 57, 61, those channels combine together to create an 80 megahertz wide channel. Okay. So the 80 plus 80 megahertz would be where your channels don't have to be consecutive. You could have four channels in a totally different range. Let's say this 119 here, 109, that's the wrong one. 113, 117, 121, 125. Those four channels, the 119 channels, could be combined with the previous four channels, the 55 channels, and they could be used to transmit and receive data in concert with one another. The point is, the 80 and the other 80 do not have to be consecutive in 802.11 AC. With 802.11 AX, things are a little bit different. With sorry about this. I keep forgetting I can't write over my head. So yeah, Wi-Fi 5 allows 80 megahertz or 80 plus 80, which is sometimes called 160 megahertz. With 802.11 AX, they allow for a straight 160 megahertz wide channel, and they also allow for 160 plus 160, which would be a 320 megahertz wide channel. So with 802.11 AC, they allow for wider channel bonding. With 802.11 AX, 802.11 AX is Wi-Fi 6. They allow for wider channel bonding. They allow for 8 channels to be bonded together consecutively so that you get a full 160 megahertz bonding. With Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 5 is 802.11 AC. With Wi-Fi 5, only 4 consecutive channels can be bonded together, and then you can pair those 4. You can pair that 80 megahertz with a separate 80 megahertz somewhere else. Okay. Kai Bosan asked about PSD. I have not yet gone over PSD yet. I just said yet twice in one sentence. My bad. PSD I'm going to cover in a little bit. I realize I'm probably taking too much time here giving kind of an intro to some of the basics. So again, where we are here is just kind of talking about the basic intro. We get 1200 megahertz. The idea is we're going to alleviate the spectrum crunch. We didn't necessarily have a spectrum crunch in the 5 gigahertz band in the existing Wi-Fi bands if we were using 20 megahertz wide channels. But again, according to Aruba Network's point man in getting these extra channels opened up, in lobbying the FCC to get these extra channels opened up, the point wasn't 20 megahertz wide channels. The point was allowing people to use 80 megahertz wide channels or even wider. And the reason for that is because these 80 megahertz wide channels allow for these faster speeds. The idea was we may not have a spectrum crunch when each device is only capable of, let's say, 120 megabits per second maximum, but we want Wi-Fi devices to be able to do 500 plus megabits per second maximum. And if we try to do that, then we do have a spectrum crunch. Okay. Real quickly, where are we today? Where are we with the 5 gigahertz band? With the 5 gigahertz band today, we have, if we're using 80 megahertz, again, that's the focus here, is 80 megahertz. We have a total of 6 available channels in the United States. Those channels in the United States are channel 36 through 48, 52 through 64, 100 through 112, 116 to 128, 132 to 144, and 149 to 161. So those are your 4 channels. Sometimes different people will give them different names. Sometimes people will name a channel based on the center number. So for example, some people might call this first one channel number 42 because that's halfway between 36 and 48. That's one way to do it. That I wouldn't say that's the way that most that it's done in most environments. I would say in most environments it's going to be 36 through 48. That's the way that channel would be named. So the point is we have these 6 available channels. A couple of caveats about this. The 149 through 161 is not available in the UK or Europe. And look, I haven't looked at the UK or Europe rules in a few years. And by the way, when I say Europe, let me put that in quotes. For example, Singapore uses the same rules as Europe. So even though Singapore is not physically in Europe, Singapore is still using the same rules. So basically any country that uses the European rules or the UK rules would follow this. That channel is not available in Europe. Also, channel 144 is not available in Europe. So 132 to 140, yes. 144, no, in Europe. So that's another limitation. Yet another limitation is channels 120 to 128 are sort of limited in the US. Those channels are the channels that are used by Doppler radar, the type of radar that's used for by meteorologists, to kind of predict the weather. It's going to rain tomorrow, it's going to be sunny tomorrow, whatever it is. Doppler radar is used for that. Doppler radar uses channels 120 to 128, and Doppler radar gets precedence over Wi-Fi. So your Wi-Fi can sometimes get a little bit unstable if you have a Doppler radar tower relatively near where your Wi-Fi deployment is. So some organizations avoid those channels. I know that when I was working with USC, I always recommended that we completely avoid those channels. And we actually did. To my knowledge, we never used channels 120 through 128 anywhere at USC. Indoors, outdoors, dorms, offices, classrooms, auditoriums, basketball arena. We always avoided channels 120 through 128 just because we knew that there were potential stability issues with those channels. So even though I say 6 available channels, it's not necessarily going to be 6 fully available channels. Here in the US, you kind of lose one of them, so you have 5 available channels if you're using an 80 megahertz bandwidth. If you go to the United Kingdom or Europe or Singapore or other places that use those rules, you kind of lose 2 of those sets of channels. So you'd only have 4 channels. And to be honest with you, I don't know if there's Doppler radar restrictions or things like that in the UK or in Europe. So maybe even less than 4 channels in the UK or Europe. So that's what we have in the 5 gigahertz band, kind of coming into things. In the 6 gigahertz band, what we are getting here is 14 80 megahertz, not 18, 80 megahertz channels. So we're getting a lot of extra channels. Okay. And again, that's the whole idea of this 6 gigahertz band is alleviate the spectrum crunch for those situations where we're using the wider channels, where we're using the 80 megahertz wide channels that can give us the 500 megabits per second of real speed, or at least somewhere in that range, 400 or 500 megabits per second of real speed. That's kind of the idea here. That's the quote spectrum crunch that we're alleviating. And look, if 14 channels is quite a lot. You combine that, even if let's say, okay, we're only gonna, and again, I'm using United States rules here. Even if we're gonna only add 5 channels from the 5 gigahertz band, 14 channels plus 5 channels, that's a total of 19 channels. In most Wi-Fi deployments, you're gonna have fewer than 19 access points. Whoops. Hitting each individual client, seen by each individual client. So 19 is going to be more than enough. And in most Wi-Fi deployments, you could perhaps even go wider than that. I know, for example, the last hospital project I was at, most areas that we went to in the hospital, they probably had a maximum of maybe 8 access points that could be seen by a given client, probably even less than that. And so if you only have 8 access points that can be seen by a given client, you could even go to wider channels. You could even use the 160 megahertz wide channels. It's going to be a total of 7 160 megahertz wide channels if you're in the 6 gigahertz frequency band. And so if you're deploying Wi-Fi in a hospital, and if you've done your surveying, you've done your design, and you expect that client devices are going to see no more than 6 or 7 access points at the absolute most, you could even use 160 megahertz wide channels. Those speeds may approach a gigabit per second for a typical Wi-Fi client device. So that's kind of the idea of the 6 gigahertz band. We didn't really have a major spectrum crunch with 5 gigahertz as long as we use narrower channels. 20 megahertz, maybe 40 megahertz at the absolute widest. But what we want is to be able to get these faster speeds that we get with the 80 megahertz or perhaps even the 160 megahertz channel. And the 6 gigahertz band alleviates the spectrum crunch for that. It alleviates the spectrum crunch for the wider channels. Now, here's the tricky part about it, okay? So I'm getting back to the full band, and let me clear all this stuff out here real quickly so that we get a clean look at the full 6 gigahertz band. The tricky part about it is there are different parts of the band with different rules. Uni 4 is no Wi-Fi. Okay. Uni 4, it may be a little bit difficult to see that on the graphic that I have on screen, but Uni 4 is technically part of the 5 gigahertz band. Currently, the FCC is not allowing access in Uni 4. Uni 4 would be 5 gigahertz channels numbered 169 through 185. Or, I'm sorry, 185. So that would be channels 169 through 185. And again, that is technically still part of the 5 gigahertz frequency band. So that's not allowed. And for those of you that may be unfamiliar, the 5 gigahertz band again has Uni stands for Unlicensed National Information and Infrastructure. Wi-Fi must always operate on unlicensed frequencies, on unlicensed channels. It's just the nature of the technology. And what it comes down to is Wi-Fi is a LAN technology. LANs can be owned and operated by anyone. And so therefore wireless LANs have to use frequencies that are available to anyone. Unlicensed is the name that the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission here in the US, gives to channels that are open to everyone. Okay, so that's where the unlicensed comes from. It just means open to everyone, and Wi-Fi has to operate on channels that are open to everyone because it's a LAN technology, and LANs are for everyone. So again, Uni 4, not used in Wi-Fi. Uni 5, is used for Wi-Fi. However, indoor-outdoor rules are required. And I will talk about that a little bit more later. Same goes for Uni 7. Uni 5 and Uni 7, indoor-outdoor rules. Uni 6 is indoor only, and I'll talk about what the indoor only rules are momentarily. Indoor only rules also apply to Uni 8. What we don't know yet is what's going to be supported in real world access points and client devices. Will the real world access points and client devices that are, and again, I don't know if I emphasize this enough, but the certification here is Wi-Fi 6E. So Wi-Fi 6, that's 802.11ax. The E means 6 gigahertz is supported. Okay, that's, so if you have a Wi-Fi 6E access point or client device, what I cannot tell you at the moment is, will it support indoor only? Or will it support indoor outdoor only? Or will it support both? Because that's going to potentially limit which channels can be used here. Okay. So again, that's kind of something to be aware of. Let's go through these bands. Let's also talk about these indoor only and indoor outdoor rules. The first band, just going from kind of bottom to top, the first band is Uni 5. Uni 5 is indoor outdoor. Here are some rules, and you can hopefully kind of see the numbers here. Uni 5 goes from channels 1 to 97. That ends up being a total of 25 channels if you're using the 20 megahertz wide frequency. But remember, we don't want to use 20 megahertz. We want to use the wider channels. So really what this means is 6 channels if you are using the 80 megahertz wide frequency. If you're really getting bold and you want to use the super wide frequency, the 160 megahertz wide frequency, hopefully you can see it down here. There's a total of 3 channels available. That says 160 in case it's not clear. There's a total of 3 channels available for the 160 megahertz wide frequency. Okay. So that's what we have with Uni 5. Channels 1 through 97 are the numbers. So if you ever see Wi-Fi 6E, 6 gigahertz, channel number 49, then you know that that's an indoor-outdoor channel. You know that's part of Uni 5. Here's what we have for indoor-outdoor rules. For indoor-outdoor rules, AFC must happen. There is no LBT requirement. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about what AFC is. I'm going to talk about what LBT is, just in case those are new acronyms to you. AFC is required. There's no LBT requirement. Devices can use LBT, but they don't have to use LBT. And we have the same power regulations as 5 gigahertz. Okay. So those are the big things to Those are the big things to understand about indoor outdoor. And remember, indoor outdoor applies to Uni 5, but also Uni 7. Whoops, there's supposed to be a dash there. So for both Uni 5 and Uni 7, indoor outdoor rules apply. Let's go through the details on these 3 things, on AFC, LBT, and the power levels. I'm going to start with the power levels. So these are the 6 gigahertz indoor-outdoor rules. Let's start with the power levels. For those of you that are familiar with the 5 gigahertz band, this should be old hat to you. You should already be aware of this. The maximum conducted power. Conducted power is the term that the FCC uses here in the United States. Conducted power is the term that Aruba Networks uses. However, I would say most of the Wi-Fi community, vendors, Wi-Fi professionals, whatever, I would say most people use the term transmit power. So if you see someone write about transmit power, talk about transmit power, if you're discussing your Wi-Fi network with someone and transmit power comes up, that's what I'm talking about here when I talk about conducted power. The maximum conducted power for access points is 30 dBm. 30 dBm is equal to 1,000 milliwatts. The maximum conducted power for clients is 24 dBm. That is 250 milliwatts. Also, another power regulation is equivalent isotropically radiated power. Equivalent isotropically radiated power is your conducted power plus your antenna gain. You know, every wireless radio has to have an antenna attached to it. Whatever the gain is of your antenna, you got to add that to the conducted power when you're calculating EIRP. For the FCC, EIRP also includes a MIMO offset if you are using an access point or a client device that supports MIMO. MIMO, M-I-M-O, stands for multiple input, multiple output. Modern client devices and access points typically will support MIMO. The MIMO offset for a 2-stream MIMO access point or client device is 3 decibels. 3-stream client devices or access points is 4 point something, and I always forget I think it's 4.25. I'm going to put a couple question marks there because I might be misremembering there, but I think that's correct. And if you have 4-stream access points, which is, I would say, the most common number of streams supported by enterprise access points today, then you have a 6 decibel offset. Okay. So this total EIRP value, you add together the conducted power, the antenna gain, and the MIMO offset, the total EIRP value for access points has to stay under 36 dBm, which is 4,000 milliwatts. And for clients, it has to stay under 30 dBm, which I already talked about being 1,000 milliwatts. Those are the same power levels as the 5 gigahertz band. If you're already familiar with 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi rules in the United States, you're already familiar with 6 gigahertz indoor-outdoor. Again, this is indoor-outdoor only. Even put in a different color to emphasize. This is indoor-outdoor only. We'll get to the the indoor-only rules a little bit later. So that's part of it. That's the first part. That is power. The second part of the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi rules I mentioned is AFC. And I always forget exactly what AFC stands for. I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's automatic frequency coordination. I always forget, but here's the key thing about AFC. AFC is an online database of existing channels used by licensed wireless communications that Wi-Fi networks must avoid. It is continuously updated. Anytime some type of site-to-site microwave link, wireless internet service, that's been deployed in your area, could even be a satellite link depending on the frequencies. Anytime one of those pre-existing licensed wireless services changes frequency, that service can update this AFC database, and then the Wi-Fi networks that are nearby, that are in the area near this licensed wireless service, have to blacklist the frequencies that are used by licensed communication. So basically, what the AFC is a database of prohibited channels. Okay. Now look, I was not involved in lobbying the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission here in the United States, for 6 gigahertz unlicensed. Okay. A lot of other people were. People from Apple, Chuck Lukashevsky that I mentioned earlier on, people from Cisco, people from a variety of technology companies were lobbying the FCC saying, hey, we want unlicensed frequency in the 6 gigahertz band. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? One thing I know for a fact, Wi-Fi people were lobbying against AFC. They viewed it as bad. They wanted as little AFC as possible. Here's what I don't know. What I don't know is AFC a deal breaker? Are Wi-Fi 6E access points and client devices just going to avoid indoor-outdoor channels entirely because of AFC? Are the Ciscos of the world going to say, you know what, it's just going to be too complicated if our Wi-Fi 6E access points have to go out to the internet to these AFC databases and then blacklist channels for our typical indoor Wi-Fi? Because remember, these are kind of like primarily outdoor rules, even though this is technically an indoor-outdoor regulation. So is Cisco going to say, okay, we'll have our access points support Uni 5. We'll have our access points support channels 100 through 97. Even though they're going to have to look for AFC, they're going to have to go out to these databases and look at these blacklisted AFC channels. I don't know that. I would not be shocked if typical indoor access points do not support Uni 5, do not support channels 100 through 97. Now, I don't have any inside info on that. Chuck Lukashevsky is on Twitter. I had to check what the heck his, I'll wait to check exactly what it, let me see. Maybe I can find that on my phone real quickly here. RF_Chuck. That's the Twitter handle. So, hey, send a message at RF_Chuck. Say, Chuck, do you have any idea if, maybe I'll send a message. Chuck, do you have any idea if Uni 5 channels, he works for Aruba Networks, Aruba HPE. So do you have any idea if Aruba Wi-Fi 6E access points are going to support the indoor-outdoor channels for typical indoor access points? Maybe he's going to say, yes, absolutely. It's not a problem. AFC is fine. Yeah, thank you there, Kai Bosan. Much appreciated. So, yeah, it's just something that I don't know. The other part. So, again, remember there were 3 parts here. Power, we talked about. AFC, I just talked about. The other one is LBT. LBT stands for Listen Before Talk. Listen Before Talk. And really what LBT requirements are is they are an anti-5G requirement. Okay. Wi-Fi networks naturally do listen before talk. There's a protocol in the 802.11 standard called CSMACA, Carrier Sense Multiple Access with Collision Avoidance. It's in the 802.11 Wi-Fi standard. CSMACA is a listen before talk protocol. every Wi-Fi access point, every Wi-Fi client device must listen to the Wi-Fi channel before it ever transmits a Wi-Fi frame. That's listen before talk. Cellular networks do not do listen before talk. With cellular networks, the base station controls everything. And so the RAN, if you want to call it that, the radio access network, that's, the name that sometimes is used in the cell phone world to describe the base stations, the cell towers, if you want to call it that. The cell tower, the cell base station, the RAN controls everything. So the client devices, the towers, they don't have to listen before they talk. The tower just talks, or the tower tells the client to talk. They don't listen to make sure that the Wi-Fi channel is clear. For the indoor-outdoor channels of 6 gigahertz, there is no LBT requirement, at least that I could see in the documents that the FCC has put out there. And I'll link to to that document very shortly here. So, at least to my knowledge, there is no LBT requirement for indoor-outdoor. So even if Cisco, Aruba, Mist, any of the enterprise Wi-Fi vendors say, oh, you know what, AFC is fine. Most of our access points are connected. Pretty much all of our access points are connected out to the internet somehow anyway. We can go look at this AFC database and we can use that. That's fine. There still may be some vendors, it's possible, I don't know, but there may be vendors that say, you know what, we don't want to be interfered by cellular. I remember when I was doing the work at USC, University of Southern California, the university here in Los Angeles, there was a lot of talk about 5G coming to campus, about saying to the service providers, okay, you can deploy 5G indoors, you can deploy 5G outdoors, you can deploy 5G everywhere as a way for students, faculty, staff, researchers, etc. to be able to get onto the internet via the cellular network. There's no rules in the 6 gigahertz band, at least that I'm aware of, that would prevent cellular providers from just overrunning Uni-5, from just using these non-LBT protocols to make it so that Wi-Fi becomes more or less unusable on channels 1 through 97. Again, this is probably a better question for someone like Chuck Lukashevsky, better question for someone who works at a Wi-Fi vendor, has inside info about what the vendor's plans are, if they expect there to be some type of LBT limitation in the future for indoor-outdoor, stuff like that. But as of now, at least the way I'm looking at it is, I don't have a ton of optimism for Wi-Fi in the indoor-outdoor space. For indoor-outdoor, which again includes Uni-5, Uni-5 is indoor-outdoor. For Uni-5, that's channels 1 through 97. And for Uni-7, get to Uni-7. Uni-7, also indoor-outdoor, channels 121 through 185. Same rules as Uni-5. Same rules as Uni-5. There's supposed to be a little dash in there. So same radio frequency power rules that I just described, AFC requirements that I just described, lack of an LBT requirement that I just described. There is no listen before talk requirement. Uni-5 and Uni-7 are bands that at least I do not have high confidence in for Wi-Fi. I may be wrong. Hopefully I am wrong. Hopefully channels 1 through 97, channels 121 through 185 will work great for Wi-Fi. Hopefully access points that are for indoor and outdoor Wi-Fi networks will support those frequencies. So I would love it if we could use those. It's just, when I see that there's no LBT requirement, when I see that there is an AFC requirement, and LBT may be the bigger problem of the two, or lack of LBT may be the bigger problem of two. it just concerns me a great deal. Let me give you that link here before I get into the indoor-outdoor rules. And for Kai Bosan, that's where I'm going to talk about PSD. That's where I'm going to talk about power spectral density. But yeah, so here is the link. Gotta find the link again. Take me just a moment here. Where is it? There we go. So for those of you that are following, or that are following along live, here is the link. Those of you that are, I might as well bring up the web page so that you all can see this here. Whoops. So yeah, there you go. It's a what I would recommend for finding this. You can see the URL here. So if you want to pause the video, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching the archive on Twitch, you can see the direct link there if you want. What I would recommend is